the Patriots kind of play in the NFL. And by that, I mean they do play. They're one of the 32 teams in the NFL. But if there was a relegation, absolutely they would be gone. This has been an embarrassment of a season, and somehow probably a little bit worse than our expectations, which were not great going into this season. And at 3-11, it doesn't even feel like they're that good when you see the way they play against an Arizona Cardinals team that was really kind of in the same position as the Patriots going into last season. You know, I said this about the Commanders earlier in the year. It's like those are two teams that are vying for playoff spots right now. Washington felt like they had one a few weeks ago. Arizona could well play themselves into the playoffs in the next couple of weeks here. Indianapolis is another one to a lesser extent, but all these teams were in similar situations going into 2023. They were going to suck. And some of them were trying out new quarterbacks like Richardson in Indianapolis. Arizona, people wanted to trade their franchise quarterback. Like these teams had huge talent deficiencies going into last season. And all three of them are in the playoff hunt right now, even though they were in the same position as the Patriots going into 23, whereas the Patriots are now 3-11. I mean, shit, even the Panthers were favored in the game the other day. Did they win? No, but they were favored. They were favored. So things are turning there. And still, as well as the quarterback is playing for the Patriots, things are not turning for them to the point where you are in year one of the Jerod Mayo experience/experiment. And this could be the only year. And it's gaining momentum by the day amongst fans and I would say media members too, of how can you go on? Like, how do you go on with this? It's a shit product on the field, and it's even worse once they get off the field. You know, I mean, talk about the dysfunction. We've been criticizing both coordinators all season long, for one. Then you criticize the head coach for these conservative play calling and, the shitty personnel and the dumb penalties. And then there's stories of, the guys laughing and yucking it up after losses. Then you've got the head coach throwing the OC under the bus after a loss on Sunday. And it's like, this is just so far from the franchise that the Patriots were for so long, but also really far from any kind of functioning, contending NFL franchise in 2024. Because to hold them up to the pedestal of the 2010s Patriots is unfair. Like, no team has really hit that for that long, right? And that level of function, okay? But I just look at these other teams around the league and I'm thinking, these guys have got it right. I can't believe how far ahead a franchise is that's coached by Dan Campbell. You know what I mean? Like, we were laughing at that guy a couple years ago with Miami, and now he's running the most stable organization in the league. Like, it outside of Kansas City, I guess. That would be fair. But like, it's incredible just how far off the beaten path they are. And it's now beginning to, again, gain that steam of not just, is this the last year for the guy, but let's start looking at who you go after. And Burt Breer was on NBC Sports Boston talking about specifically that quote from Jerod Mayo of, you said it, I didn't say it, or whatever, when talking about that 4th and 1 decision to not run with Drake May and the ramifications that quote and this dysfunction might have for the Patriots next year.
Seen infighting between offensive coaches and defensive coaches. I've seen infighting between players and coaches. I've never seen a head coach do that. And you guys know how much I think of Jerod Mayo and his potential as a head coach. That was one of the worst moments I've ever seen at the podium from a head coach.
And you think it could cost him his job?
He threw his offensive coordinator under the bus. I think now, like, to me, and again, I haven't heard this, but like, I think now all bets are off. Mike Vrabel is going to be the hottest name on the market. You're going to have one shot at him. There's a potential that you could bring in a whole new offensive system with him. Maybe Josh McDaniels comes with him.
Now that's interesting at the end there, because I was not alone in this, but as soon as they announced that Belichick was gone last year, I was banging on the drum. Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel's got to be the guy. Here he is. He's just unjustly fired. in Tennessee. And while things were going downhill in Nashville, he had a pretty good thing going there for a while. And he was part of the team that brought in a lot of these guys who are now starring for other teams and was utilizing them with the Titans. And I couldn't believe they didn't even interview him. I mean, there were rumors that the owner in Tennessee wanted to fire him because he went to the Patriots game on his bye week to, accept the red jacket and go in the Patriots Hall of Fame, and did that whole, speech at halftime talking about how great it was to be a Patriot. That apparently the Titans owner was pissed at that, and that was one of the reasons for his firing. And to think that after that he didn't even get an interview with the Patriots is asinine, which I've talked about time and time again this season of how can you justify not interviewing anybody for the head coach of the New England Patriots? You know what I mean? It's just, it's baffling to me. And I'm surprised Vrabel hasn't said anything about it I couldn't believe I never got that call. You know what I mean? And it just goes to Jerod Mayo willy-nilly. And now, like Breer said, this is your last shot at Vrabel, because he is going to be the number one guy on like 3 or 4 lists for probably 5 or 6 NFL openings this year. Like, he's going to be interviewed more than probably anybody in the league, him and Ben Johnson, the Lions OC. They're going to be interviewed more than anybody. And if you don't get him now, you're up Schitt's Creek. You're not getting him. And I said this at the time, Mike Vrabel, he's not, there's going to be an available head coach who has a Super Bowl ring as a head coach, and he will not be as hot a name as Mike Vrabel. Doug Peterson is not Mike Vrabel. Mike McCarthy might be available, another head coach with a Super Bowl ring, and people will not have as much confidence in him as they do in Mike Vrabel, because you just don't get many guys who are 10 games over 500, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look at the guys who are available year in, year out for head coaching positions, you just don't get many guys who are 10 games above 500 in their NFL head coaching career. And that's where Vrabel's at. 54-45, 6 seasons with the Titans. They made the playoffs 3 straight years. They were the 1 seed one year. They went to the AFC Championship game another year. He had them going. He's, I think, now with Cleveland. I think he's a consultant with Cleveland. But he will be the top guy on a lot of teams' lists, and he should be. He's also the kind of character that you want, especially for a young team, which is what the Patriots are, because he doesn't take any shit. Okay? Like, he's been in the trenches. He was a great linebacker. He probably should be a Hall of Fame linebacker. Like a linchpin of 3 Super Bowl teams. And you want to talk about a guy who does the Patriot way. Like, I get it. Jerod Mayo was a tremendous player for them. He won a Super Bowl on IR. Like, that's fantastic and everything. But Mike Vrabel was a part of the building of that dynasty and has coached other places. So he knows guys around this league. Again, we talk about, the Van Pelt this and Covington that, and how bad their assistant coaches are. And is it just the assistant coaches, or is it the head coach as a whole? Or is it the fact that the head coach didn't play or coach anywhere else but New England, and he doesn't know anybody? Mike Vrabel has coached in college and in the pros as a head coach in the NFL. That was 1 win away from the Super Bowl. As much as I love Ben Johnson, you're taking a risk there as well as a guy who's never been a head coach. Mike Vrabel, it makes all the sense in the world. He was a great player for your franchise. He clearly knows whatever the Patriot way that is still left. And he utilized it in Tennessee, and they were winning more at the end than the Patriots were. So if you think that the Patriot way can still succeed, and also that the game has passed Belichick by, then here is your perfect solution. It's not Jerod Mayo. It's Mike Vrabel. Vrabel has that Patriot way about him. He's also won more recently than Bill Belichick has. So there's your perfect combination right there. And bringing in Josh McDaniels, I mean, that's a no-brainer. In fact, I'm stunned Mayo did not do it. And I don't know if that was an ego thing of like, hey, I don't want to bring anybody back here. We want to change something up. Or if it was McDaniel saying, hey, I can't. You just replace Bill. Bill's my guy. I don't know. But the Krafts, they love Josh McDaniels. Just love him. So I would not be stunned at all if it's a Vrabel McDaniels combo package. And I am taking that 11 times out of 10. Every time. Jerod, wish you all the best. Hopefully you can succeed as a coordinator somewhere else. And then maybe get another crack at being a head coach. But it's not working here. And not only is it not working here, but you have got a big-time name that makes a ton of sense right there. And if you don't do it, then someone else will. The Saints, maybe the Giants. I know the Saints love Vrabel. There are going to be other options. The Jags, I mean, they saw him in the division for years. They will be looking at a guy like Mike Vrabel as well. It's now or never to go and make a move like that, a move that I think this franchise desperately needs. Because again, it's somehow getting worse. Let's just look at this in a vacuum. Like, of course, we didn't expect them to be better than a 4 or 5 win team. I said if it was a good year for the Patriots, it would be a 5-win team. And what I meant by that was if you do get the quarterback in there at some point and he looks pretty darn good, this team can get to 5 or 6 wins. That stuff happened, except the wins part. So let's look at this in a vacuum. You were pretty shit at the beginning of the year. You bring in Drake May in October, and it's the best case scenario for him. He plays really well and has played really well. But the roster you put together and the coaching staff you put together couldn't figure out anything else to make this team any better. Like, amazingly, they have had such an upgrade at the quarterback position, and yet this team is just as bad as they were in week 4. Like, truly. They improved vastly mid-season at the most important position on the field. And team-wise, they are just as bad as they were when they looked like they were going to be a team that would win 1 game the whole season. That's what your coach's legacy is right now. That's what your coach is hanging his hat on at the end of the season. Because he's not going to be able to say he won any games, really. You know, he's not going to be able to say that there's a direction with the team. And he's not going to be able to say that they got better as the season went on. Like, think about that. If a coach can't say any of those 3 things, how do you hold on to him? Again, he cannot say they won many games. He cannot say there's an obvious, clear, positive direction for this franchise. And he can't say they got better throughout the season. So what is the excuse? I don't understand. I don't understand how the Krafts are just privately telling him, no, don't worry, you're safe. Like, based off what? Because you don't want to admit that you're wrong. And that is the Kraft family, specifically Robert. Jonathan might be ready to move on right now. And who knows how many of the strings he's pulling at this point. But this is Robert Kraft saying, I don't want to admit that I was wrong because I just fired the greatest coach in the history of the sport last year. And then I dragged his name through the mud for months and months and months. I made documentaries. I made phone calls to NFL owners saying, don't hire him. He's a mess. I basically blackballed him from this league for a year. I cannot fire his replacement after year 1 because then the fans might say, maybe we should be more on the Belichick side, which I think most of the Patriots fans already are. Obviously unmistakable what the Krafts have done for this franchise, but what they need to realize is they are the owners. They're not the coaches. They're not the GMs. Those guys build championship teams. The owners put those guys in place, and there's an important position for that. But it's not nearly as important as the GM and the head coach, and you're figuring it out right now because both those guys in those positions suck and have no leg to stand on after what went on this year, even for a team with low expectations.
We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. And if you like this video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a ton. You can follow me on Twitter here for some more outrageous Boston sports takes coming to you every weekday at noon Eastern time. And then after that, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are Rogue Media Sports.